Ready?
Ready.
Here we go. All right, we're back in the Ionit studios today in Laguna Beach, California. And today is no different. We just keep rolling them out. We have an incredible gentleman who's coming on the show. He's broken Guinness World Records. He's an athlete. He's a speaker. He's a trainer. He's a coach. And he definitely understands the mind and body connection, which we'll go over. And he owns it. And that's why he's coming on, because he is a man that's lived his life where he understands being accountable to himself, his family. He understands his behavior and his body and what he puts into it and what the output is. So, James Iron Cowboy Lawrence, welcome to the show. It's great to see you. And let's get right into it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. You were introducing that, and I was like, man, I want to meet this dude.
I'm talking to him, so I'm really excited about it. Obviously, you are known for your Ironman triathlons,
I thought
and
I thought you were going to say for doing stupid things.
no, no, not at all. Actually, it's pretty admirable, a lot of things you've accomplished. Let's talk about that. I'm gonna let you outline it because you can go on the internet and there's different gradations of he's done this, he's done that. I'd rather just let everyone hear it from the source. And it's so important because it leads into a lot of great lessons that spin off of what you did. So outline for everyone just some basics of what you've done over the last, I would say 15, 20 years to get to where you're at right now. Just a brief little, bullet points.
Yeah, well, that's crazy. Going all the way back, my journey started with a 4 mile fun run, and
Mhm.
people see a headline today and they're like, "That dude's different," and I'm not. I'm different than I was 15 years ago, but that's been a journey. But from there, wanted to do my first triathlon and got into that community and loved it, and then saw the Ironman Kona World Championships on TV, and I was like, dude, I just want to do one, right? And trained and did that, and things kind of escalated, and broke the world record for the most half Ironmans in a year, raising money for charity. Then broke the record for the most full Ironmans in a year, 30 Ironmans to 11 countries, and that gave us the belief and confidence to do what's in the documentary that's on Amazon Prime called Iron Cowboy, and it was 50 full distance triathlons in 50 consecutive days through all 50 U.S. states. Flat out told that was impossible logistically, physically, mentally. And then most recently, we did what's called the Conquer 100 project, was where we controlled the environment here in Utah, based around my home, and we did a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, a full 26.2 mile marathon run, which is called a full distance Ironman triathlon. And we did it for 100 consecutive days. So no days off, a quarter of a year, 14,000 plus miles. And then in between that, I've ridden my bike up to Mount Kilimanjaro. We've run 235 miles across Greece. I've done every race imaginable. I did an 8-day adventure race in Fiji that's on Amazon Prime. It's called The World's Toughest Race, a Mark Burnett production, hosted by Bear Grylls. A few months ago, we did a race called Ram Race Across America. I've done the Swim Run World Champion. I mean, you just name it. I've had an unbelievable career. I've now been able to speak to 50 countries. It's just, I wake up, I pinch myself looking back on my career, as my physical career is coming to a close, and I'm shifting my focus now. But those are kind of some of the highlights of what we've done over the past 10, 15 years. I'm married, celebrating 22 years of marriage. We've got 5 kids. I grew up in Canada. I grew up as a wrestler, and I just kind of fell into this endurance space. Love golf the most. And I'd love to get back down into the single digits as a handicap. So yeah, it's kind of me, big picture right there.
Let's just take a step back because I want everyone to know how challenging this really is and how unique this is. So in 2015, you did what you call 50-50, where it's 50 Ironman triathlons in 50 states in 50 consecutive days. Incredible. Just to think of that someone can do it. I mean, I love to train. I love to lift weights. I have a trainer. I enjoy health. And it really resonates with me because I know how challenging that is. I'm 52 years old, and I think you're 46.
Yep.
So the fact that you've been able just to do one Ironman triathlon's an incredible feat for most people. Then in 2021, you did 100+1. So you did 100 Ironman triathlons in 100 days. I got to tell you something. That is incredible. Okay. And
Thank you.
people out there have told me, they're like, we're so excited for you to talk to the Iron Cowboy because it's such a cool thing. But what I love about you, it's not about the accomplishments, it's about how you were able to do them. Because to me, the uniqueness is, yeah, the physical side is just absolutely incredible, but the mindset and the things I want to discuss with you. I mean, let's just start, like, what made you want to start doing triathlons? What was the catalyst that said, I want to start doing this?
Yeah, so it goes all the way back to that 4 mile fun run that I did with my wife. It was a Thanksgiving tradition. In fact, we've done it every year since. My family now does it with me. We kind of pay homage, if you would, to where our journey began. So every year we get out there in November and run that 4 miles around Orem, Utah. But to get into triathlon, so I started that run, and to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy running at all. And my wife, she lovingly signed me up for a marathon, which was the Salt Lake City Marathon. That race was in November. The marathon was going to be in April, and she was like, "Figure that out." And ended up running the marathon. Hated it. The funny part of that story is there was some MMA fights, some UFC fights that night in Salt Lake City that I went to, and I was so pissed at how terrible the marathon went. I'm like, I'm not moving out of my seat. I'm just going to enjoy the fights. And that night ended, and I legit couldn't get up out of my seat because my knees had swollen up, and I had to get wheelchaired out of the stadium. Now you've got to imagine this is the machoist of environments, and to have that was incredibly humbling, embarrassing, and that was kind of a decision tipping point for me because I was like, how do people run like pain free and all this kind of stuff? And so really started to dive into it. Found triathlon, fell in love with cycling. I, I, I've learned to enjoy swimming. I barely tolerate running, which sounds crazy with the career that I've had. But it was just the community was so great. My wife and I were doing it together. It was a fun way, because you get out of high school and college and competitive sports. And as a competitive athletic male, I was like, I need to find something that fulfills that competitive juices that I have. And triathlon was it because they break it down into age categories every 5 years. You're only competing against those guys, and they take the elites out. And so, I was able to be competitive right out of the gates. And as I started to evolve, I did sprint triathlons for a long time. Still love that distance, and evolved. And 3 years later, did a half Ironman, and then got ready to do my very first full. And once I did my first full, it was incredibly humbling. Just because when you look at that distance, right, it's 140 miles. And I started to figure out, like, this isn't just a 3 discipline sport. This isn't just swim, bike, run. There's recovery, there's nutrition, there's the mindset piece of it. Then there's the strength component to it. And when you start to really dissect triathlon, it's 6 events, right? You only showcase 3 of them, but you got to be really good at all 6 in order to be great at this sport. And I think that's what ultimately really attracted me to it, was like, I have to master 6 different things in order to master this, distance. And I kind of fell in love with that quest. And then, we just started to snowball what we were doing, and we started breaking some records as we were raising money for charity. And then we just let destiny take over at that point. And we were always tie these big things to charitable things. And we always brought the kids along with us. It became this family affair. And now, what's fascinating is when you're on that journey and you're in pursuit of something, once you accomplish it, more becomes possible because you've evolved and changed, and your experience and perspective changes. And it's this ever moving line because your experience evolves with your ability to show up and tackle things. And so It just was always the next natural progression from us. But the newest viewer to our story is like 100 consecutive 140.6 mile races. Like that's so absurd. But for us, it was just always kind of, oh, this is what's next. This is what we believe we can do. This is what's next.
What do you like most about doing a triathlon?
Um, I love riding. I love riding my bike, and so that's always fun. Really, it's the community, the energy, the sense of accomplishment when you finish something. And it's hard to put together that perfect race to where you execute the swim. You have so much power and strength on the bike, but at the same time, you're really being patient. And then you have the ability to run strong, and you don't have any issues that day. That pursuit of a perfect 140.6 mile day is kind of what you chase. And when it happens, it's so incredibly special. I imagine it's going to be like my first hole in one, but very different because I haven't got one of those yet. But I imagine when that feeling comes, it's going to be like, holy cow, all the strokes that I put before this is all becomes worth it. So for me, I think that's what, you're going to have good days and bad days with everything in life and business and relationships and parenting and, everything. And you just really appreciate the days where it's perfect and everything kind of clicks and feels good.
Well, not just the highest and the lowest points, but what are you typically feeling at mile 72 when you're riding your bike?
Why am I still on my bike? And holy hell, I still have a marathon to run. It's fascinating that you said that because for me, I do a lot of speaking around the world. And this moment when I present this concept, it's about mile 80. And about mile 80 on the bike is when that we have that conversation with ourselves. And that, you can call it whatever you want. I call it the bully inside of our head, but it's that moment in everybody's journey when you're trying to do something and it becomes just uncomfortable enough that you're questioning what you're doing because you can look ahead a little bit and see the road ahead that you still have to go. And if I'm uncomfortable now, what's that going to look like? And so I always joke and I say I retire every single race about mile 80. And I've just gotten really, really good at managing that conversation with my head because I know what's on the other side of that. And in racing too, even in a single day race where it's 140 miles, you've got moments where you feel good and you dip a little bit and then you feel good again. But a lot of people, they just get to that point where they don't feel good and they don't realize that you can swing and you can change how you feel and create that momentum. And so, yeah, it was a funny question because for me, every time I retire, every single race, I'm like, never again. And then as soon as you cross that finish line, it's like, when can I do that again? Right? The narrative completely changes from I'm retired to I'm back in the game.
You know what's amazing to me? I don't think anyone's ever asked this for you. I was dying to ask you is the logistic side of signing up for, let's just take the first one, 50 and 50, right? So
Um,
you have to be in 50 states. You got to find 50 triathlons. You have to have your team. You got your home life. I think the logistics side is pretty interesting to say, how did you time it? Like, okay, I'm going to be in where I'm originally from, Illinois. I'm going to go to Indiana to maybe there's a race in Indianapolis or wherever that may be.
okay, so
And how
here's
did that work where
yeah,
you are structuring 50 races and you have to time it because when you finish the previous race, you got to, I assume you're driving the
yeah,
whole time. Who's
yeah,
driving? Are you or someone from the team?
yeah. No, not me.
Okay, that's what I thought.
During the 50 days, I only got about 4 hours of sleep a night for 7 weeks.
Wow.
And that's extremely taxing on you. And I think what the biggest thing that people don't realize is the compounding effect of that little sleep and the compounding effect of 12, 14, 15 hours a day of physical activity. So here's one thing that I guess we need the public should have a better understanding of that doesn't
Sure.
understand racing and whatnot. So the world record that we did in 2012, the 30 Ironmans through 11 countries, those were all official events, and that's why these are different world records. So the 30 Ironmans were all official events around the world, 11 countries. You got to sign up a year in advance. And this is where you're talking about logistics, right? Like me and my wife and a buddy, we're all sitting on a computer at the same time. These races sell out and a year
Mhm.
in advance. And we
Mhm.
didn't have any money. And we were just like, okay, we're going to bootstrap this thing. I hope this works a year from now, right? And planning it all out on the maps and everything. And so that was insane preparation for that. And then you get into the year doing the 30 Ironmans in 2012, and then you got to figure, because that's airplanes through 11 countries, and you got to show up to an Ironman event 2 days early. You got to check in, you got to bring your bike, you got to build your bike, you got to break it back down, you got to put it back on the airplane, you got to get to the next event. And so the logistics were crazy. Now, the 2015 world record, the 50 Ironmans, the world record category is the consecutive 140.6 distances covered, because there's no races on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like races are Friday, Saturday, Sunday typically, or Saturday and Sunday. And so this is what makes this 50 so incredibly difficult. We had to organize 50 different races that people could come out and join us with. So now you throw on top of that, I'm not just showing up for an event, I'm organizing an event in 50 different states to put it on that people come join us. So now
Wow.
the complexity of that quadruples, right? And so we started mapping it out. I went to this, my kids were super young at the time. They were ages 5 to 12. And I went to Walmart. I bought the biggest map I could find. I put it up on the wall, and I was like, okay, let's start drawing lines with dry erase markers and figure out how we can get from state to state to big enough metropolises that there's enough people to join us, because the whole purpose was to raise money for childhood obesity awareness. And so what we did is, at the end of our Ironman, which has the marathon in it, we did a 5K race. We did a 5K race, and that's where the public would come out and race. So every night, no matter what mile I was on, at 7 p.m., we would stop and gather and do a 5K event. And then once that 5K was done, I would go off and finish my miles until I was done. We'd load up the motorhome. One of the two wingmen, Casey or Aaron, would drive us to the next state. But you got to think, too, you got Hawaii and Alaska.
Right.
And so we started with Hawaii and Alaska, because I was like, okay, if something goes wrong with commercial airplanes, I can hit the reset button on day 3. I don't want to hit the reset button on day 47. And so we started in Hawaii, went to Alaska, flew to Washington, and there the two wingmen and the motorhome met us, and my 5 kids, and we all piled in. We had 2 or 3 chase cars, and we caravanned the rest of the way across the country on the lower 48 states, putting events on in places I'd never been before. This was all on Google Earth and coordinating with 1 or 2 volunteers from the triathlon community in 50 different states. And so I think that's what people just truly don't understand: the magnitude, the difficulty, the enormity and size of the United States. And you've got such a small time window to finish and get to the next state, set up, and do it again. It's like we're like a circus, right? You can imagine breaking down and setting up a circus every single day for 50. That's 7 weeks, no days off, event planning. I mean, it was crazy.
You must have an incredible team, because if you're done with a race, you got to go to the next city, right? You need some sleep. How many people were on the team? Just take the 50-51 as an
Yeah,
example.
and that's, again, this is going to blow your mind, and what makes that journey so special is it legitimately was me, my wife, my 5 kids, the 2 wingmen, Casey and Aaron, a very small film crew that did nothing but film, and probably 2 or 3 other guys, that friends of mine, that could come in and out
Mhm.
from time to time. We were a shell crew. So you can imagine, I need Casey and Aaron to help me all day, but then we need them to drive through the night. And so they're 24 hours a day for 7 weeks. These guys had something to do, like catching 15, 20 minutes of time sleeping. And then we can't even get into the incredible sacrifice and what my wife did to entertain 5 kids, to solve all the problems, give me the care that I needed, the loving tenderness, but be the bulldog in the room that says this needs to get done, and this. Like, we had a manager early in the journey that kind of up and disappeared, and didn't do what he said he was going to do. And one of my promises to my wife, Sunny, was like, look, we're going to do this, but you can come on a 50-day vacation with the kids, do something really cool in every state. I'm going to be occupied for 14 hours. And by day number 3, she was like, this isn't going to happen unless I step up. And her entire thing changed. And she knew nothing about the planning, because up until literally the week before we left, she was graduating with her psychology degree and raising 5 kids while I was trying to do the training, the logistics, the coaching, all these things to make this dream happen. And we were so heavily criticized because people couldn't see the finish line and what it would translate into. And I'm an entrepreneur. And really the whole 50 was modeled after an endurance runner named Dean Karnassus. And I looked at Dean, and Dean was the first person to do 50 marathons through 50 days in 50 states, and went on to have a coaching career, speaking career, book deals, all these things. And I thought to myself, man, this was right at the end of the 30. I was on race 27 of 30. I was in Arizona, and I looked at my wife and I said, we've got to do 50. And she was like, no, this is not what we're doing. And it took me a little bit to get her there. And obviously we had to finish that journey. But this entire 50 was inspired by Dean's efforts and what it turned into for him. And so as an entrepreneur, I was like, dude, if I pull this off, this could change my life. Because in 2008 through 2011, we owned mortgage companies and we lost everything. Like they took my home, my cars. Like we had $0 in the bank account and had to completely reinvent who we were. And a lot of that would cripple a lot of people. And we looked at it as an opportunity in that moment. And that's really when the 2012 world record and then the 50 and the 100 were, put into motion.
You mentioned child obesity was what you're raising money for. Is there a personal connection to that said, this is the giving back we want to do? Like, what's the connection between you and childhood obesity?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've done kind of 3 big projects, and each time the charity and focus has changed. And it's in direct reflection to where we were in our lives personally. And at the time, I had 5 kids in elementary school. And you're probably like me, you can think back to your elementary days and you remember the 1, maybe 2 kids that were overweight. And you can name them by name probably still.
Absolutely.
But today, like I'm very active in the kids and the school system and whatnot, volunteering and whatnot. I go to school and it's 70% of the class, 50, 60, 70% of the class. And I heard a statistic from Jamie Oliver, who's big behind this. And that's who actually we ended up raising money for, was the Jamie Oliver Foundation. And he did a really impactful, for me, TED Talk. And in the TED Talk, he wheels out this wheelbarrow full of sugar and dumps it on the stage and says, this is how much sugar our kids are consuming in sodas at school. And then he said, this is the first generation ever where the parents are slated to outlive the kids. And I was like, holy hell, that is a terrible statistic. I want to see if we can do anything about it. I talked to my kids and they were like, yes, let's raise money to help combat this, and awareness that this is a thing. And then fast forward to the Conquer 100 project, I now have 4 teenage girls, and we're raising money to eradicate human and sex trafficking. And so that became a forefront and a passion for us because that's the phase of life that we were in. And then as I learned a lot about that, it impacts adults and young men and all these. It's not just teenage girls. And so really, if you look at our journey, and every time we've gone to raise money, it's a direct reflection to something that resonates with us in that time period of our lives.
That's fantastic. What is it about you that you believe that makes you want to push your body to the limit? I've always wanted to ask you that.
It's fascinating because I don't know that I set out on this journey to accomplish that. But once you do your first, kind of full distance Ironman race, you're like, oh, well, I can do another one and I can do it better. Right. And I think as humans, I think that's just inherently wired into us. Like, oh, I want to be better. I now have different experience and knowledge. I can push that envelope. And for me, it was just super exciting. I was having success doing these smaller things, and we were raising money for charity and kind of accidentally broke that half Ironman world record. And I was like, okay, well, that was amazing. What's the full Ironman world record? And that's what put us on that trajectory. And then as we've evolved and gained confidence and a lot of experience in doing this types of thing, the 50 seemed possible and doable. And then after you do the 50, anything seems possible. And then we did the 100. And now I believe myself, my team, with the right sacrifice, time, resources, I believe anybody can do anything. But you can't. This is where the message gets a little convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
People see this and they go, "Oh, I'm going to go do 102," right? And they don't have a decade worth of doing this type of thing and experiences. There was a gentleman in the UK that sent me an email on Instagram and he was like, "Hey, I would love your permission to break your world record." And I'm like, "You don't need my permission. Like, go nuts. What's your experience?" And he's like, "I've never done an Ironman before." And I'm like, "Okay, this dude's kidding. Like, he's joking." And then 2 weeks later, he announces with kits and shirts and sponsors and everything. He's like, "I'm going to do 102." And I was like, "Oh my hell, he has no idea what he just signed up for." And ultimately, he made it 7 days. And it's because you can't go from 0 to 100.
That's right. It's a great lesson you just brought up, and let's touch on that.
Yeah.
Preparation, whatever you do in life, it could be business, it could be what James has phenomenally accomplished in his life so far. All these things, he just didn't snap his fingers and go do 50 or 50 or 101 Ironman uh, triathlons in 101 days. It just doesn't happen like that. He has to prepare, he has to train, he has to work with his mind and his body. He has to have a team. It's a lot of work and a lot of preparation. And I want everyone to understand that in anything you do in life, whether it's business, relationships, whatever, you are constantly building blocks to get better. And it's like with my business in commercial real estate, I didn't become who I was in this business if I didn't go through failures, if I didn't understand and learn the different variables that go on in having success and owning commercial real estate around the country. And so I think it's an important point. I really value that you say that, because that's important for people to know that it is a progression, it's work, it's dedication, it's being upset. I'd have to imagine you must have been obsessed when you're like, I'm doing this 50-50,
Dude,
we're getting it done.
yeah, I was so hyper focused that it just consumed me. And that's why we were able to be successful at it. Is because we were just so one focused. And that's the thing is I want people to dream big. I want people to think massive goals, massive dreams, because that's the other thing I've learned too, is we're on this journey where people have forgotten how to dream. They've forgotten how to think big. But the huge asterisk beside that, the caveat is you have to respect the enormity of that dream. You have to respect the how big that thinking is. And we live in a world of I want it now. And that big thinking, big dreaming combined with I want it now is a perfect recipe for disaster and failure. And if you do that enough, and this is where it becomes destructive, you do that enough and you fail enough times, and you're not learning to respect that process, you're not learning to do the appropriate stepping stones, gain that knowledge, make the connections, you then start associating yourself as a failure. And that becomes your new belief system, which completely sidelines you. And eventually you stop trying, dreaming, and thinking big. And so that is what's been so destructive. Me watching people, because they see the headline and they get motivated and inspired, which is awesome, which is what we try to do as a team. But the problem is they don't respect the journey from the beginning. They're looking at a headline and going, I can do that. But they're not willing to sacrifice. Everybody, and I'm telling you, Ben, everybody knows what they want, but few people know what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get it. And to get where we've gotten as a family and as a team, it's taken insane amounts of sacrifice, and it's taken 15 years. I had to break 2 world records before anybody even started to believe that we were capable of doing what we did. It's a lonely journey, man.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that because you're on the road, and I think what the bike portion you've said is about 6 hours of time. The
Yeah,
marathon, I mean, who knows? That's got to seem like an eternity when you're running it. That
yeah,
and with the frequency,
yeah.
how do you deal with your inner voice? And a lot of people deal with what I call the no's, like, James, you shouldn't be doing this, or you're running and you have shin splints, and all this inner voice, I would think through every race has to be talking to you and you're battling it. It would be interesting if you were able to record your thoughts during a triathlon. I don't know if you've ever done that before. That would be really neat, because what's the inner voice going on with you and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, it's interesting. During the Conquer 100, we actually every other day we worked with a psychologist from Australia who's been compiling all of those notes and data to kind of come out with what's the conversation look like and how do you deal with it. But the reality is, and this is a great question, and the number one question I get on the road is, how do I become more mentally tough? And mental toughness to me equates winning the conversations that you're having with yourself. To me, that's the core basis of mental toughness. And the only way to learn how to communicate with the no sayer, the naysayer, the bully inside of our head is through experience and taking action. And again, that's the part of the process that people aren't willing to do. They got a concept of dream big or whatever. They either take massive action too quickly and fail, or they don't take any action at all. And the only way to learn how to talk down that voice, kind of bring light in and put it on that darkness, is through experience. And in order to gain the experience needed to do something like the 100, you need a decade worth of having those conversations, learning how to gain success and create momentum, right? And it starts with little tiny wins. And it's exactly the exact opposite of what we just talked about. Is we start to believe that we are a failure and then we stop trying. Well, let's flip that script and let's start smaller and start to amass wins and gain momentum. Now success breeds success and confidence breeds confidence. And all of a sudden we're able to take that momentum and put it into the next big thing, because now our perception and perspective has changed as we evolve through this process. And so the conversations simply is just out of experience, learning how to shift from darkness to light, learning individual phrases or sayings on how to silence that bully inside of our head and replace it with, a lighter version of that bullying.
What blocks people that, in your estimation, you've been through these incredible journeys in your Ironman triathlons, and you had to learn tremendous, not only about yourself, but also about what stops people from being successful, what blocks them. What do you see from your experience, which is tremendous on really the human mind and your development? What can you share with people that says this is what's probably holding you back? This is what I learned, and when you have fear and all these things going on inside of you, this is what's going on and how you prevent that to create success.
Yeah, the world is filled with lazy, entitled people.
Hmm.
And those lazy, entitled people don't want to see you succeed. And so they're going to try to infiltrate your mind, your belief system. And the biggest thing that I see is people start to believe those other people. And nobody's going to believe in you unless you believe in yourself first. And you have to have such an unwavering belief and conviction. And unfortunately, you see it with parenting and the way that they talk to their kids. We've created a culture where it's bad to dream, it's bad to think big, it's bad to be creative, all these things, and it's been suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. And you even see it in teachers and community system. And we're stifling these kids' ability. And so it starts there, and then all of a sudden they have formed this new belief system because of outside influences. And so if I could give any advice to anybody that's on a journey, is like, don't listen to anybody else. Like, believe in who you are so hardcore. Like, it's called the 100% hardcore you. And dude, I sat down with doctors before the 50 and I said, hey guys, you guys are the experts. What do you think? And they said, well, we think you're going to die. Guess what? The first thing I did, I stopped talking to doctors. They didn't have the perception and perspective that I did about my body and my mind and the journey that I've been on. I legit stopped consulting doctors because they didn't have a clue. They didn't have a mindset that I did. And they tried to put fear inside my brain and my body. Leading up to the 50, I'd sit down with media and they'd say, hey, what do you think your chances of finishing this is? And I would kind of pause, and I didn't understand the question, because for me, in my mind, it was 300%. I'd already done it. I had done the exercises. I'd created the maps. I'd covered every inch on Google Earth. I'd already done the 50 before I went to Hawaii, before I got on the plane. I'd crossed every finish line hundreds of times in my mind. I had done it. It was 300%. So when they asked me the question, I was like, I don't understand. It's 300%. It's already done. I just now have to physically and mentally go do it.
You talk about as a kid not deciding to buy into the societal ideas of success, but to pursue your own ideas. Can you share about more of what kind of things you felt pressured to want as a kid, and what about you steered you in a different direction?
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got this mindset, and you can see it really changing. I think it's swung too much to the other side, but you see a lot of people that are like, hey, look, I don't want to work for a corporation. I don't want to build someone else's dream. I don't want to work till I'm 65, retire, take a pension, and live a mediocre retirement. Right? I want to be in control of my future. I don't want to have a limited salary. I want to be able to create my own future. I think it's gone a little too much where nobody's willing to work anymore for anybody else, and then that somehow that translates into I'm not even going to work for myself, and I just think everybody should give me something. We've gone too far that way. But I think I was raised in a really exciting time in life. I was born in the '70s. I grew up in the '80s and '90s, and I watched my dad, who was a unbelievable blue collar firefighter, hard worker, very conservative. You work for 40 years, you put in your time, you take your pension, and you retire. And I look at that and it was like, man, that sucks. I don't want to do that. Right. And then I look at my mom, who was like a dreamer and entrepreneur, tried a lot of different things, but really couldn't get it off the ground to where she was making any money or successful, and just an unbelievable woman. And I looked at that and I'm like, okay, I'm more of a dreamer, but I also believe that, or now have, understanding that I also have to put in the work and sacrifice in order to make that happen. So I've created this kind of perfect combination of my parents that is a hardworking, dreaming entrepreneur. And to me, that really opened up the Pandora's box for me, and lifted that ceiling. I legit can't remember the last time I had a job. But I have an unbelievable life, and I just create my own destiny whenever I want to. So, to answer your question, that's where I believe I made that connection and that shift to I'm going to live out my own destiny in life. I don't want to, be under the thumb of someone to tell me what to do. You got to show up here at this time. But I also understand that I have to create value for somebody else on my journey. And as soon as I stopped focusing on, okay, how much money can I make, to how many people can I help? And as soon as I had that paradigm shift after the first one, that really changed things for me. And now I just try to help as many people as I can. And I live a great life now. It's amazing.
How do you approach your health? I mean, it's so important to you and what you do and your accomplishments. How do you deal with your diet and your sleep on a daily basis?
Yeah.
What's your routine, and how do you approach fueling your body? Because most people look at this and they're like, if they did one Ironman triathlon or they work out like I do on a daily basis, what do you do that you could share that people can learn from?
Yeah. This is this is going to be a do as I say, not as I do scenario. Because you look at a bodybuilder that's not healthy. It's athletic, but it's not healthy. You look at an Olympic gymnast that's athletic, probably not healthy. You look at any Olympic gold medalist, probably or absolutely very athletic, probably not healthy. You look at what I did, extremely athletic, not healthy. Right. But those are just small parts in our life. Now I'm a huge, huge believer in health and fitness. I've learned a lot, and almost was forced to, because after the 100, I mean, neurologically, my brain was fried, mentally, physically, adrenals drained, hormonally trashed, so I really had to take a step back and go, okay, that was incredible. We did that, but what were the consequences of being that extreme? And how do I come into true health? And to me, it took cognitive therapy. I had to reset some neurological pathways in my brain, which is a fascinating process. Physically, from the conclusion of the 100, I had to stop moving. I needed ankle surgery. I broke my back on day 59 in a bike crash. I was dealing with a lot of health complications, obviously. The body's just not designed to do 100 and 14,000 consecutive miles. And so it, by being forced to stop, I ballooned up to 196 pounds. And I'm just on a journey back to normal health. I'm done doing extreme challenges. I now want to help people be healthy. And if they want to do an extreme challenge, I'll help them get ready for that too. And so sleep is super important. We use a hyperbaric chamber here. We do red light therapy. I use a PMF pad. Um, High nutrient dense foods. We follow macros. We watch our caloric intake. I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night. I laugh when someone's like, dude, like Jocko, I wake up at 4:30 every morning. I grind till midnight, and I'm like, great, you're gonna explode and kill somebody one day because you're not honoring your body's rest and sleep cycle and whatnot, and that's gonna catch up with you eventually. And I love Jocko, man. In fact, I've got one. I've got his book right at one. I've got all of his books. I think he's a genius. But I just laugh when I'm sitting there and I'm like, cool, dude. I have an amazing life and I sleep 9 hours a night.
Well, sleep is the most important thing for your health, and most people ignore that, and that's a challenge. How do you approach recovery? Like, with your muscles, you know, think about like when you were going through your race, you must have had there's so many different elements because all these different states have weather conditions, elevation, the terrain, humidity. So you're probably getting blisters, you're getting aches and pains. What's your recovery on a daily basis?
Yeah. So during the 50, it literally was a matter of just holding on, getting a massage person when we could. My wife Sunny did everything she could. Did a lot of self soothing, and that was one of the things that we thought to make the 100 possible. I need a therapy team at my house as soon as I finish. And during the 100, I worked with a gentleman named Hayden Thompson and Felicia Hurst, both unbelievable. And I couldn't have done it without them. Literally worked on me 3 hours a night as I was passed out on the table, just full body manipulation, just the foot care that needed to happen. There was just every single day we were dealing with something. And, if you followed our story, you know that I had incredible shin problems that when it shot up into my hip that created, we crashed on day 59. I broke my back. So we were always dealing with something on the 15. So that team became so incredibly important because if I don't have that team and I can't even just maintain or try to recover, I don't have a chance. You're talking about, if you think the compounding effect over 50 days incredible, finish the 50 and hit the reset button and do it again. That compounding effect is insane. And from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, good, he's done today. He's 14 hours and now he can sleep and recover and rest. Dude, it's an all-out effort to recover and rest and sleep. I mean, just the pain in the muscle treatments and acupuncture and all the things that we had to do is not only painful, but it's time consuming and takes energy. And then, you're trying to sleep and your body's trying to recover, which is taking more energy. And try to eat 12,000 calories a day while moving. And then when you're trying to sleep, you're having full body tremors, night sweats, and full body convulsions. It was 24 hours a day for a quarter of a year. And I think people just from the outside looking in be going, oh, good, he's done swim, biking, and riding today. But it's a full-time effort for 24 hours a day for 3 full months.
What's your relationship with the staffers? Because they have to be so, I mean, they're critical to your success.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously the relationship with my wife is very unique in the fact that she has a ton of compassion. She also knows when to be hard on me. She has to be the mother, the wife, and also kind of the nail driver. But the two wingmen, they were unbelievable. Aaron ended up doing all 101 bike rides with me, was there every step of the way, was monitoring all of my data. He on his bike, he had all of that data. He would control the pace of the group and make sure that I was safe. He was my protector out there. And then Casey again he did all 100 marathons with me and was right beside me. So those two are like brothers. My wife's my wife. Those two are like brothers. Hayden's the glue. I call him the wizard. I couldn't have done it without him. And I just have a really great relationship. We are a really small group, but we're a really tight, high functioning group. And I think it's rare to find to do this type of thing, you've got to be able to find the right people, and that takes the perfect storm. Everybody's great on paper, and everybody's great when they're fully rested. Dude, you got to be great when you've been punched in the face, kicked in the nuts, and have 2 hours of sleep, and you're exhausted. Like, you got to be great then, right? That's how you know you got the right team. And I've done a lot of different events with a bunch of different kind of teams, and every time I'm doing it, I'm like, where's my crew? Like, where are they? I need my team back, because they're really what makes us flow and what makes it happen.
Well, you touched on something. I have a saying, tough times don't last, tough people do. And
Yep.
when you face adversity or lack of sleep or whatever, and someone can rise and because life is easy when life is easy, so to speak. But when times are tough and your staff is going through, we got to get to the next city, or we have a short window to do this or that, or we got to continue with the documentary, or we have issues. How do you rise to that occasion? That's so important. Let's
Well,
talk about. Go
real
ahead.
people ask me all the time, like, how do I select my team? How do I put a team like you did together? I'm in a corporate setting. How do I do this? I'm like, take them on a 3-day retreat, exhaust everybody, and see who performs well.
Oh,
You,
that's
you'll
that's a
you'll you'll find
great,
you'll find your team
great
in
knowledge
3 days.
there.
Three
I
days you'll
love
find.
that. Love that. We should definitely make a note of that. Tell me about the documentary. Did you have a lot of fun making it? And which one is it for? The last one, the 100, or is it for the first one that you did?
So there's a current documentary on Amazon Prime and on Peacock. It's been on Netflix, and it's about the 50. It's called Iron Cowboy, and we're in the process of doing the post production for the 100. And it's going to be crazy. The 100 one's going to be interesting for me, because I don't remember a lot about the 100,
Mhm.
because mentally I had to go somewhere else in order to do it. And I'm probably I had a really hard time watching the trailer that just came out. It's on my social media, Iron Cowboy James on Instagram. It's about a 2.5 minute trailer, and it was hard for me to watch. I imagine I'm going to watch the 100 documentary one time, and I'll probably never watch it again. And right now we're in the process of writing the second book. Our first book is called Redefine Impossible, and it's a family autobiography, and every other chapter is about the 50 and the experiences that we had there. The new book is probably going to be called Defy Logic, and it's going to be about the experience of the 100 and the people that we've met along the way. Um, it's also been very challenging to write. One, because I don't remember a lot of things, and two, because the things that I do remember were very traumatic for myself and the family. And I just want to put a caveat that I'm not looking for sympathy. We know we intentionally did all this. We get it. Don't be like, well, you did it. I know we did it intentionally. Like, I get that. But so I'm really excited for the release in 2023 of the new book and the new documentary. Um, I I think it's going to be very valuable, and it's going to have incredible impact on the way people think. Because if you take a look around the landscape today of society, the number one thing we're dealing with is people that are having mental struggles. Like, they're so filled with anxiety and depression. They can't handle social situations. We've forgotten how to work. We've forgotten how to sacrifice. We've turned away from routines. We've lost a sense of tradition and culture. And to me, all of those things are a tragedy. To lose perspective on those things. And so the book and the documentary, if I've learned anything, is that our team's willingness to suffer has given people hope on their journey where they're not intentionally suffering. And I think the book and the new documentary is going to really be helpful for people, and give them courage and strength on their journey, their life, where they're not choosing to suffer, but they've been dealt a card, and you're either going to lay down, or you're going to figure out how to navigate that card that you've been dealt. And everybody in life's been dealt a card, and we've been dealt just different cards and different amounts. And we all have to go through this life, and we all have to learn the same lessons. And it's our choice to choose how fast we learn those lessons and progress to the next lesson, right? And that's just how life is going to unfold for everybody.
And thank you very much for sharing a few moments ago about what's going on in our society. I agree with you, and we need to get back to our roots, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, one of the things that I admire about you is that you've raised a lot of money for Operation Underground Railroad, and I know that's special in your heart. And can you share more about how they're helping kids, and how are you involved in that organization?
Yeah, so during the 100, we were able to raise over $500,000, and that money doesn't pad any executives' bank accounts. It goes to sting operations to take down the bad guys, and those just straight up take money. Real men have to go in and do sting operations and take down those guys that are sitting behind computer screens and abusing kids and men and women. I mean, it's tragic to think in 2022 that we're dealing with slavery. You think about it, and everyone, on the surface is like, slavery doesn't exist anymore. No, it exists. It's real and probably bigger than ever. It's just done in a different way. And so the money that we were raising for Tim Ballard and the operations that he does, I don't think you can put a price on it. I don't think you can put an amount of suffering on it. And if I knew I could go raise another $500,000 I'd go do it again. As terrible as it was the first time, maybe I need to figure out a different way to do it. But
Wait, hold on. You've done 50, 50, 100, 100. You could raise money. That's just your mind saying you can't. Wait, we got to shift that. You can raise money.
no, I'm saying I don't want to go do the
Oh,
physical.
right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can raise money. I just want to do it in a different way this time.
One of the lessons you talk about uh, that really gravitates to me is focus on one thing.
Mhm.
Let's expand on that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Explain what you mean by that, because you talk about your experience and focusing on one thing in order to create success and not overwhelm you, and pick a niche and become really focused. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think, again, putting a blanket just on society right now, and I get that that's not a great thing to do, but there's some truth to it. And if you take a look around, and there's a lot of people that are just like trying to become great at 100 different things, and they're just moving towards the next shiny object or the next thing that's going to entertain them or whatnot, and they don't really see something through. And that's the quickest way to fail in life, is to dabble, and not really try to become an expert in something, and see it through. And I think people need to approach their lives in a way that they become an expert at something, not in a fake sense, like you're just posting that you're an expert on social media, but legitimately being an expert in it. Like, I could wake up tomorrow and do that with my eyes closed, kind of thing. And that's how you become successful. And if people could apply that focus on parenting and their business and on self-development and whatnot, like, just go all in with what you're doing with a hyper focus. And it's so interesting because people are like, well, how do I keep a balanced lifestyle and become an expert in X, Y, or Z? And the reality is you're going to go through life, and there's going to be greater moments of sacrifice that isn't a forever sacrifice. My family had to really sacrifice. I had to really sacrifice for a half a year. And we are now enjoying the fruits of that sacrifice, and will for the next 10, 20 years. And so I think people need to truly understand that sacrifice isn't eternal, and being unbalanced also isn't eternal. And as long as you come back to balance, then you're going to be okay. And kind of a good example of this is, people are like, well, how do you find time to spend 1/3 of your time? If it's like family, leisure, and business balance, we'll call it. Trust me, my teenage girls don't want 33% of my time. They don't, but they want 10 minutes. And when I'm giving them the 10 minutes, they want all of me for 10 minutes. Right. And so balance doesn't mean like an equal mathematical ratio. It means effort, and it means making sure that when you're putting the effort into that, it's happening, and everything's happening right there.
Well said. How proud are you of your daughter that she's now your CEO running the company? Your brand is growing. I actually saw someone wearing one of your T-shirts
Oh yeah.
the other day. Yeah, it was kind of eerie because I looked down, I'm like, why do I know that symbol? And then I went to your website. I go, oh my God, James is coming on the show in a couple of days. It was like, it was just really weird to see that. And so your brand's growing. You're out there, and she's running the show. How proud of you? How proud are you of your daughter with her growth? And
Yeah.
how great is it to have someone taking that side and responsibility off your shoulders? Talk to me about how you feel about that, your relationship with her. Is she this tough person where she's saying, you know what, Dad, get out there, no excuses. I need you to do this. We need this because of this is going to happen, the domino effect. Get out there and do it. Like, what's that like with you with her?
Yeah, incredibly proud. She's, I've had a couple different people try to understand my business and run it, and she ran the entire campaign for the Conquer 100 and did an unbelievable job. And as soon as that was over, she was like, "Dad, I've been applying for this job my entire life," and I'm like, "It's yours." And she does. She runs all my contracts, all my speaking, all my calendar. Like I'm not allowed to touch my calendar. She does the merchandise. She runs, our coaching business side. Like she does everything. She's turning 20 next month as a 20-year-old. I mean, it's so rare, and I can't be more proud. She's going to graduate with her 4-year degree after 1 year out of high school, and just that type of. I think that's one of the greatest things that has come from the challenges that we've done as a family is they've got a front row seat to sacrifice, dedication, no excuses, zero entitlement. You reap what you sow. You show up and sacrifice, and you can get the rewards. And they still have a ton of fun in life, but they understand, look, I got to show up. I've got responsibilities. And if I want to create my own future, I have to do XYZ too. But yeah, she's out there pushing me, man. It's so cool. She's like, no, Dad, we got to get this done today. I'm like, but I want to go on a bike ride. She's like, I don't care what you want to do. This is what needs to be done. And to have that perspective as a 20-year-old is really, really proud moment for my wife and I, who, we've just tried to be present in our kids' lives, and we've just tried to set an example for them. And then ultimately, kids are going to choose as they become adults, what lessons they want to do. But we're just extremely grateful that my wife and I, and we're not perfect, we struggle every day, but we're grateful that a lot of our kids have really paid attention. All of our kids have really paid attention. I've got 5 great kids. Like we talk about one, but I'm excited for all their futures. They're all gonna do unbelievable things in their own little worlds.
You and Sonny are wonderful parents, and there's kids out there that don't have what your kids have, that
Yeah.
role model, that leader who, you take action and you use your actions to teach and show your leadership. And there's folks out there that don't have that influence. What advice would you give them that can help them get to a different point in their life, if any, of the people, the folks out there, the kids out there that in society don't have what your kids have, that influence, that Sonny and James foundation that's allowing these kids to grow and prosper? I mean, with the foundation you're growing, your kids have such a great advantage because they've seen your actions and your teachings, and you're showing them the path where they can fish for themselves as they get older. So what advice would you give people that don't have that advantage like your kids do?
Yeah, even I've been around the world, and even in like incredibly poor areas, they've got smartphones, and internet access is becoming almost accessible everywhere at no cost. And there's so many great thought leaders out there putting out free information. If you don't have a good mentor in your life, it's not the 1980s. You have access to incredible thought leaders, an endless flow of information. I truly believe that if I lost everything today, I could pick any category in the world and I could learn how to do it on YouTube. I could develop a skill set. I could watch videos. I could implement the things that people are teaching with $0 out of my pocket. I think there's a lot of great teachers and coaches in the school system. I think we see the bad apples and they come to the forefront, which I think is tragic, because there's so many good educators out there right now. I remember growing up, my mom was a dreamer, my dad was a hard worker, and I was big into sports, and I relied heavily on the mentorship of coaches in a public school system that were great. I discredited the ones that were just whatever and there for a paycheck. But if you really want to learn, if you really want to surround yourself with great people, you can find them and rise up to them and follow them and teach them. Ask them how you can serve them. You have to crave it, right? You've got to want to go after it. First, you got to recognize that, look, I don't have leadership in my life. And how can I go get it? And we live in an unbelievable time. We live in an unbelievable time of access. And it doesn't cost, if anything, to have that access. Everybody knows somebody with a phone. I guarantee if I lost my phone right now, I could go to someone and say, hey, can I borrow your phone for 5 minutes? I just want to watch this video, right? I could go to a friend and say that. And some of us only have one friend. It's okay. Some of us have no friends. And we just got to work and inject ourselves into that type of thing. If you want something, you got to go get it. And because we live in this unbelievable time of access, of information, of thought leaders, like there's an unlimited supply of personal development. You have to want that change. And just first recognize, look, my parents aren't the mentors that I want. And you can go find it somewhere else. It's there. You just got to want it, crave it, and go find it.
Yeah, it's gotta come from the inside, and I think when you and I were kids, we didn't have the access to information. If you remember, microfiche and encyclopedias and the stuff that we did to learn, now with the internet and what's out there, there's a real advantage. So if you take advantage of the resources out in society, like James said, you can really advance yourself if you're in a situation where, whatever your dreams are aren't being promoted at home or in your environment. If you do it yourself and really are proactive and persistent, you could do whatever you want. I think, James, that's one of the things I look at you that you're promoting is really uh, you're not someone that just talks. You do it. You have actions. You lead.
Yeah.
And I want everyone out there to know how important that is. Is that with the people you follow in life and you look for people that inspire you, that actually did it, that actually can show you the road of what are the values and like you said, the benefits that come out of that sacrifice and what it means. Was
It,
there ever Go ahead.
sorry, it just takes a little bit of humility and a little bit of action.
Absolutely.
And a willingness to want to learn, to be teachable. I think those are some incredible attributes that will take someone to success. And just to have the humility, like no job is above me, and I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to give my time, energy, and effort. I'm willing to give that for free in order to gain knowledge that I can use in my life later. And everybody's goal should be to turn into a mentor or a coach to help other people, because that's where you really learn the most. I can't tell you how the benefit to me personally when I coach athletes, when I coach people about mindset. I just had an opportunity to speak to the Pittsburgh Steelers rookie class, and every time I do something like that, I gain so much knowledge myself teaching it. So I think if everyone has the goal to, like, I want to get to a level in this category where I can teach it, then the world becomes a much better place and a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think it's important you chase your potential. You establish where you want to go in life and you focus and you grab it. And that's where success is created. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. It's about I always say, how bad you want it. Because if you want it bad enough, you'll do what it takes, whether it's, like you said, gaining knowledge, finding the right mentors, putting yourself in the right rooms. That's what it takes. And I think the challenge with a lot of people, James, is that people have fear in their lives that are holding them back and
Absolutely.
saying, and obviously what you went through with your races, I'm sure fear is always prevalent in different forms, but you battle through it because you have what I call experience. You've been through challenges and you use that experience to battle your way through those fears and
Yeah,
experiences.
this was the post that I posted just yesterday on social media, and it says, they say that actual hell is when the person you are meets the person you could have been.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that is, I saw that written somewhere, and I just thought that was so profound. And you should be fearful of that day, and hopefully that day comes and you're like, I've surpassed that person.
Well, one of the things you said that I really like is we fixate on the future of what will go wrong
Mm,
instead of living in the present,
yeah.
not worrying about what happened in the past, because I think all of our past, and I'd love to hear yours, it's like you can't get to a certain point if you didn't have your past.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have the successes if you didn't fail, or if you didn't learn something, or if you didn't meet someone. So, how do you feel when I say that comment that you've said about it's important to not fixate on the future, but really live in the moment?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that's paralyzing and crippling society today. And it's actually my favorite word right now. It's called catastrophizing. And
Hold on, I got to write that down.
catastrophizing, look it up. It's a real word. And at its core, what it means is you're looking into the future, you're creating a mythical worst case scenario, and then you live there. And then you start injecting like other side stories and scenarios in this mystical thing that hasn't even happened yet. And the problem is it pulls all your energy, all your attention into the future. Dude, let's just step back and figure out today, because if you can worry about today, it takes care of tomorrow. But the society is sitting in this like this fear-based mythological thing, and we're attracting that to happen. And when it happens, like I told you so, and I'm like, yeah, it's because you put all your focus and attention there. Of course you're going to manifest it. Shift your focus and attention to the good and start solving problems today. We're going to get to a good place, and then you can say, I told you so, right? Whether you think you're right or wrong, you're right. And you're going to lead yourself to the catastrophe if you put your focus and attention there. What we think, what we say, the energy that we put out becomes our reality.
Mm.
There is so much truth in that, and I don't care if you believe it or not, it's reality. And what you put out there is going to come back to you tenfold. And so if you're sitting in a negative spot, if you're worried about the worst case scenario in the future, instead of trying to solve it, you're sitting there worrying about it, it's going to happen and you're not going to have a solution for it.
It's a great point. Let's get into the real authentic James. So, when you look back, the name of the show is I Own It. Was there ever a time you could look back and you didn't own it fully in your life? Was there a point where you can go back and say, "Man, I just didn't own what I was doing, or struggled, or what was that moment in your life?"
That's a good question. I think I look back on some of the things I've done and wish I had prepared differently, things like that. But on the flip side of that is you're never going to be fully ready or prepared. And that's what holds a lot of people back. And I'm grateful I started when I did, owning the fact that I didn't have the level of expertise that I needed. But that's how you gain the knowledge. That's how you come across the people that you need to come across in your journey, is is by owning the fact that you may not be 100% there. You're going to plan your way to a failure, and you're going to have to own that if you don't jump in and just start trying to figure it out at some point in time and hitting all those milestones along the way, like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. um, I think I own all of sorry, my dog's going crazy. um,
That's okay.
I think I own all of my mistakes and missteps, because it's part of who I am today and has created who I am. And so I do own things. I love, again, Jocko Willnick's Extreme Accountability book out there. And I don't, man. I do own things along the way. And that's where I think has driven a huge part of our success. And I think that's those moments of missteps or failures or learning have created who we are today and has given us the confidence and momentum that we have.
So, we're going to wrap up, and we always end the show with 3 questions.
Uh-oh.
And the first question, no, you'll love it. The first question, I want you to play along, because obviously your past created your future, right?
Yeah.
So we don't. I agree with you in that respect. You don't want to change your past because you wouldn't be who you were. But however, if you're in the I Own It studios with me, we have a couch, and I said, James, lay down, close your eyes. You're a 46-year-old man who's been through a tremendous amount of experiences, great father, great husband, and you can go back and talk to yourself at 16 years old, being the person you are today. Okay. What would you tell yourself? Any advice or that you could share with your 16-year-old self that you've learned that would be really beneficial? for your growth when you were younger?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it today, but it's 100% hardcore you. And what I mean by that is like believe in yourself 100%. Have that level of belief and conviction. Understand what sacrifice and hard work is, and that there's seriously no limit to what the mind, the body, the human spirit can do, if you continue to show up in your lives. And the only way to guarantee your failure is to stop showing up and believing in yourself. And so to me, that's the most important things, to allow these kids or that kid or that 16-year-old to be who they are, to encourage them and give them an insane amount of belief, because the world stops if there's no belief and there's no hope. And I think we live in a day and age where we've lost belief and we've lost hope. And I would just encourage my 16-year-old self to stay the course, man. If you're waking up every single day with honesty and integrity and chasing your dreams with relentless pursuit, you win.
That's a wonderful answer, and I hope everyone heard that or replays that, because it's perfect
Thank you.
and it's well said. So it's your last day on earth. God forbid. You and I go out, we're gonna have a meal. What are we eating? It's your
Steak,
choice. It's your choice.
steak and potatoes, baby.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, we could bring you to a great steak place in Chicago and
Done.
fulfill that need. What
Okay.
do we now remember, it's your last day on earth. What are you washing it down with? You can drink alcohol or whatever you want. What are
I've
we
actually never
drinking?
had alcohol.
Never, not once.
I've
Okay.
never. I don't even
All
know.
right. So
Like I,
that is really impressive.
I would, to be honest with you,
Is there something you always wanted to try?
no, I have zero desire.
No. Really? Okay.
I would probably just have a nice hot chocolate with some whipped cream on top,
Okay.
as long as I can have like a creme brulee with it.
Okay. Well, yeah, we could throw in dessert.
Perfect.
So in the Iona studios behind me, you could see to my left, we have a grand piano. There's
Sure.
a drum set, and there's about 6 electric guitars behind
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You're in the studio with me. We can bring in any musician. They could be deceased or living. Your choice. Who is coming in to play us a song?
Dude, I'm gonna get relentlessly mocked for this. But it's Justin Bieber.
Okay, that'd
Yeah.
be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. That'd be fun.
I've
Like,
really enjoyed watching his rise to fame, his
yeah,
struggle, his honesty with it. I
yeah.
think he is an incredible talent. He's just a lot of fun. He's just a lot of fun to me. His current album, Justice, is I've got it on repeat. And I've got 4 daughters. We went to his concert in LA. It was amazing. There's probably others too, but just off the top of my head, like it's me and JB, baby.
All right, I like it. So, what's the best way to engage with you, keep in touch? You're growing, you're doing coaching and
Yeah,
fitness and all these great things in your clothing brand.
yeah,
And if I was speaking to your daughter and she said, Ben, ask them what's the best way to follow you.
yeah.
What is the best way to follow James Iron Cowboy Lawrence? So everyone can stay in touch. I think you have great lessons. I love your content. Keep pushing it out there. I think it's great. What is the best way to really connect with you? Your website?
Yeah, the two best ways is you can sign up and contact us directly through our website, ironcowboy.com. And then any promotions or programs or races that we're doing is always through Instagram. And our follow is at Iron Cowboy James. And so very active on social. We post regularly. We answer every DM. I do myself. And so that'd be the two biggest places is ironcowboy.com and Instagram on Iron Cowboy James, and also on Facebook, just Iron Cowboy.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. James, you are just a wealth of knowledge. I'm very grateful you came on and shared your story and your knowledge with everyone. If you are interested in following the Ben Reinberg I Own It podcast, drop kick that subscribe button on the lower right hand side. Also, feel free to follow us on any podcast platform, like, comment, click subscribed. And for more information on commercial real estate, feel free to go to benreinberg.com if you want to learn about business, health, wealth, and relationships. And if you want to learn about commercial real estate in detail and follow us, go to our company, alliancecgc.com. Feel free, if you're interested in investing in medical properties, we just launched a brand new Alliance Property Medical Fund. It's the number one fund in the United States, acquiring medical and veterinary properties throughout the United States. So, James Lawrence, thank you for your time. You do own it, and we will mark another one in the books for someone that owns it. So, thank you, sir. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. You too. Thanks,
All
Ben.
right, bud. Take care. Good seeing you.